You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, January 11th, 2018, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the program. We've got a nice show for you today, although it'll be a little shorter than usual, half hour or so, but still lots of data packed into today's show because I got to thinking about my radical rant yesterday. You know, I went off about this compliance check that happened in the state of Oregon, where they went to 5 different cities and they sent minors into a bunch of pot shops, and they found that Oregon pot shops only have a 76% compliance rate with checking IDs for the kids that go in. And that was troublesome to me. I went off on it yesterday. I want to make sure that we put our best foot forward and we don't give any ammunition to our opponents to forestall legalization in any other state or roll it back here. So I was very angry about that, but I slept on it. And this morning I got to thinking, hey, I wonder what the rate is for alcohol. So today in Drug War Data Mining, we're going to take a look at that. What is the compliance rate for checking IDs of minors for alcohol here in the state of Oregon, just to see how good or bad marijuana is doing in comparison. So stay tuned for that. Also coming up on the program today, we'll have time for a radical rant, and I got a couple of different folks to rant at. The first one is Idaho's Governor Butch Otter, and Butch had a brief statement to make about marijuana legalization that I just had to comment on because it demonstrates the ignorance of some people when it comes to the question of reforming marijuana laws. So we'll get to that, but also in the radical rant, a terrifying statement, at least from my point of view, coming from Donald Trump today, as he was signing a bill that had to do with providing more security equipment on the border for interdicting illegal drug shipments, illegal aliens, etc. And it just made a chill run down my spine. So I'll have that audio for you today in the radical rant, and I think it'll be as spooky to you as it is to me, especially knowing how Donald Trump has in the past praised Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines. We'll get to all that, but first, the news.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, January 11th, 2018. I'm Russ Belville. Vermont lawmakers took final action on Wednesday to make the state the first in U.S. history to legalize marijuana by an act of a legislature. Governor Phil Scott, a Republican, has pledged to sign the bill into law. While 8 other states and Washington, D.C. have also ended cannabis prohibition for adults over 21, they did so with voter-approved ballot initiatives. Vermont's legislative move signals a milestone in the evolving politics of marijuana. Polls consistently show majority voter support for legalization, and more politicians are beginning to see the issue as a winning one they should embrace rather than run away from. In neighboring New Hampshire, the House of Representatives approved a similar legalization bill on Tuesday. Both New England states' proposed laws provide for a non-commercial approach to marijuana, under which possession and home cultivation of relatively small amounts would be allowed, but storefronts and sales would not. Governor Jerry Brown estimated Wednesday that the state will receive $643 million from excise taxes on marijuana during the first full year of legalization in California, much more than the cost to the state of issuing licenses and enforcing new rules. Brown's estimates are contained in the budget he proposed for the fiscal year beginning July 1st and fall short of some past state projections that legalized cannabis could eventually bring $1 billion annually to the state's coffers. This year, with only 6 months of taxing, the budget estimates $175 million in pot taxes. For the 2017-2018 fiscal year, the state budgeted $52 million for regulatory agencies to create and operate trade aid licensing system. The estimate that revenue from taxes could be more than 10 times that amount was not surprising. The initiative requires about $15 million each year go to universities and the California Highway Patrol for studies on marijuana impacts. Up to $50 million annually is designated to go to grants to local health departments and community-based nonprofits. The former editor of High Times magazine claims in court that he was defrauded of his shares in the Counterculture Monthly. Stephen Hager brought his January 9th suit in Manhattan Supreme Court some 6 months after Adam Levin's Oriva Group bought a majority stake in the once family-owned magazine for $42 million. Hager notes that he had been editor at High Times since 1998, but that his relationship with the magazine soured in 2013. In October 2013, according to the complaint, High Times threatened Hager that his shares would be forfeited unless he turned over the hard drives containing Cannabis Cup footage he'd planned to use for a documentary. Hager wants $1 million in damages, but he did not mince words about his position in the May 2017 blog post, saying, quote, "High Times fired me, threatened me with litigation, seized all my archives, and forced me to give up the shares for less than a quarter on the dollar. And then they didn't even honor the bullshit deal," end quote. A new study claims that, quote, marijuana use was not associated with worse organ transplant outcomes for patients on the liver transplant wait list, end quote. Researchers from the University of California, San Francisco School of Medicine evaluated 884 adults over the period of 2 years who were awaiting a liver transplant. Almost half, 48%, were prior users of marijuana, with 7% being recent users. Though marijuana users were found to be more likely to suffer alcoholic cirrhosis, hepatitis C, tobacco use, and other drug use. However, after teasing out those confounding situations, marijuana use was not associated with the probability of getting a transplant or with mortality or delisting of the patient. On the other hand, recent illicit drug use other than marijuana was associated with a higher risk of death or delisting of the patient. The Arizona Supreme Court will decide whether lawmakers can make criminals of legal medical marijuana users who possess marijuana on college and university campuses. In a brief order, the justices agreed to hear arguments by Attorney General Mark Brnovich that the Court of Appeals erred last year when it voided a 2012 law that made possession of the drug on campuses a crime. In that ruling, the appellate judges said that law is directly contrary to the 2010 initiative, which legalized marijuana for medical use. Judges said the Voter Protection Act bars lawmakers from altering the voter-approved law. But Brnovich points out the Constitution does allow lawmakers to amend initiatives to further the purpose of what voters originally approved, and he contends the 2012 law fits that exception. That argument was rejected by the Court of Appeals. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Thursday, January 11th.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. The Marijuana Agenda is a listener-supported independent podcast brought to you by Radical Russ Media, LLC. Subscribe to our VIP feed at mjagenda.com for access to our ad-free podcast segment archive. Make a one-time donation to support the Marijuana Agenda at paypal.me/radicalruss. The Marijuana Agenda, like the conservative agenda, minus the hypocrisy.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Data Mines, we revisit a topic that I covered yesterday in the Radical Rant, and that is some data that was released by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission showing that 5 recent stings were carried out during the time between December 20th and December 29th in 5 different areas of the state, where they sent minor volunteers who had legal state IDs, so no subterfuge, these were actual minors with their actual IDs, who volunteer for the OLCC to go into pot shops, or at least attempt to go into pot shops to purchase cannabis. Now, through our legislative process, when we put the rules together for our legal marijuana shops, we instituted a double check system where you had to show an ID to get inside the place in the first place. And then once you were inside the place and wanted to buy some marijuana, you had to show ID again to be able to purchase it. So what came out of that press release was that the Oregon shops had a 76% compliance rate, meaning 24% of the shops or 24% of the stings resulted in a minor either getting into the shop and or purchasing cannabis. So this really upset me to think that nearly 1 in 4 pot shop stings failed. Nearly 1 in 4 of the shops blew it. And I was really upset about that because, in fact, I wrote the headlines basically for Project Sam and all the prohibitionists out there. Because I believe in, some George Lakoff here, some framing, which is you've got to be in charge of framing you got to jump on the story first. You got to get your message out there first. And I was a little upset with myself because I gave them their headline. 1 in 4 pot shops will sell to minors. And it's true based on that, stat, but I could have messaged it better. I was a little upset with myself last night thinking, I hate to have given them something to work with. So as my mind worked through this, I started to think, now, wait a minute, is 76% a bad number? Because if you think about it, under prohibition, the compliance check rate was 0. 0. There was no dealers were checking IDs. Now, I'll hesitate to say that every dealer who was dealing on the black market was the kind who would sell to kids. I know plenty of ethical guys who would have never done that. So we can't say it would be 0 because it was never actually tested. But I got to believe 76% is a far better rate than what we got on the black market. Still, that didn't satisfy me quite a bit because it's still 1 out of 4 just sounds bad. 1 out of 4 kids being able to buy pot still sounds bad. So I decided to see what the rate was for alcohol. Because we tolerate alcohol. We think alcohol is great. I haven't heard here in the state of Oregon many complaints about minors being able to buy alcohol at legal regulated stores. I haven't heard anyone saying that alcohol legalization is failing because kids are able to get their hands on alcohol. So I thought maybe that would be worth looking at. And so I took a look at it. And like I said, the past 5 of these stings that they sent minors in to buy weed, the past 5 stings, 76% rate for marijuana. Success rate, right? Successfully carded a kid. So I went and looked up on the Oregon.gov pages for the OLCC what the rate was for the last 5 alcohol stings. And it turns out that rate was 75%. 1 lower. That's right. The last 5 alcohol stings conducted by the OLCC, 3 in December, 2 in November, across the state, different areas, 75% rate. So marijuana, it seems, at least lately, isn't doing any worse than booze. 1 out of 4 kids can go somewhere and buy booze from a legal outlet. 1 in 4 kids can buy pot from a legal outlet. Sounds to me like the problem isn't marijuana's fault. It's just a typical problem. It's just something that we have to deal with. We have to have better trained employees and more diligent managers to make sure this doesn't happen. And then something else crossed my mind. I thought, wait a minute. Didn't I do a story just a few weeks ago on the city of Bend, Oregon, having 100% compliance rate? Like they checked out 20 shops and all 20 of them carded the kids? So I said, well, let's go find that data. And sure enough, I was right. There was a 6th compliance check. There's only been 6, right? They've only just started these compliance checks for marijuana. So in the history of all compliance checks for marijuana, all 6 of them, the rate turns out to be 81%. 81%. So now we're out of this 1 out of 4 kids can get legal pot down to 1 out of 5, a little less than 1 out of 5. That sounds a little better. But to be fair, we got to put in the other alcohol compliance, right? We can't compare 5 alcohol checks to 6 marijuana checks. So I went back and I found the 6th most recent alcohol check. And, what do you know? Last 6 checks for alcohol came up to 78%. So marijuana is doing 3 points better, 81 to 78, when it comes to compliance rates over the last 6 compliance checks. Now, that's kind of a small snapshot, right? 6 compliance checks for marijuana really isn't a large data set to be drawing any conclusions from. Still, we've got a much bigger data set when it comes to the alcohol. Over 280 compliance checks conducted over the past 4 years. And I thought it might be interesting to dig a little deeper because you know me, I look shit up. So I spent all morning going through over 280 separate PDF files at the Oregon Liquor Control Commission's website. You're welcome. And I entered it all into an Excel spreadsheet. I can tell you every single minor compliance check for alcohol for every year from 2014 on. So I decided to break this down. Let's break it down by month. In the year of 2017, how well did alcohol do in its compliance checks? Well, as I looked through the months, there was 1 month, November of 2017, where alcohol had an 84% compliance rate. 84% for the month of November. And that was the only month in 2017 that did better than marijuana's 81%. 1 month out of 12, alcohol did better. For the rest of the months, it ranged anywhere from 73% to 81%. 81% in some little bit of decimal change that still brought it lower than marijuana's. So legal marijuana in 2017 was harder for kids to get than legal alcohol every month last year, except November. Doesn't look very good for alcohol, does it? So let's dig a little deeper. I said, well, I wonder what the trend is, right? Month to month, it's hard to gauge because there's only like 4 or 5 cities they do per month, right? So the rate goes, 79 to 80 to 75 to 81 to 75 to 76 to 73. It goes up and down. It's kind of variable number. What if we looked at it annually? What if we got an annual look at the rate? And what I found is the rate for 2017 for alcohol checks was 79%. The rate for 2016 was 79%. The rate for 2015 was 80%. And the rate for 2014 was 81%. So what that's telling us is the rate for alcohol in 2014, the year marijuana was legalized, was 81%, the same level we're getting with marijuana now, 81%. Alcohol, 81% for 2014. Marijuana, 81% for the past 6 checks. And it's gotten worse since then. The compliance rate for alcohol has dropped. Not a lot. It's only 1 or 2 points. Statistically, probably not very significant, but still slightly downwards. Thought that was interesting. So I broke all 4 of those years down by month. And I found that of the 47 months of data, there was 1 month where they didn't do any checks, June of 2017. For the 47 months of data, only 17 of those months turned out better than marijuana, turned out higher than 81%. And of those 17 months that were higher than 81%, only 1 of those months was in 2017. There were 5 in 2016, 6 in 2015, and 5 in 2014. So it seems like this last year, 2017, alcohol compliance checks have gone to hell. But wait, it gets worse. I checked out the total number of compliance checks the state was doing. Like, how often are they going out and trying to see if minors are buying alcohol? Turns out, in 2014 and 2015, they did 1,395 and 1,092 stings, alcohol stings, for those 2 years. But for the past biennium, in 2016, they did 651, and in 2017, they did 692. So that means on a biennial basis, we are doing 54% as many alcohol compliance checks as we did the previous biennium, and the compliance rate has dipped from 81% to 79%. Bottom line...
Oh, I could have smoked that pot.
Bottom line, marijuana retailers are better than alcohol retailers at carding kids. Alcohol retailers are getting worse at carding kids, and the OLCC is doing almost half as many alcohol compliance checks as they used to. So get off our back about marijuana. That doesn't leave the pot shops off the hook. You got to check those kids' IDs. All right, back with the Radical Rant right after this. If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
And let me be clear about marijuana. It is a potentially dangerous gateway drug that frequently leads to the use of harder drugs.
Whatever you're smoking, it's not marijuana. The Marijuana Agenda free podcast is available on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, SoundCloud, and on our Facebook page at MJ Agenda. Free video archives are available at the Radical Russ channel on YouTube. Help keep this media free by making a donation at paypal.me/radicalruss. Now, in the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Marijuana Agenda presents this anti-drug public service announcement.
That's a good pot for you.
No.
Cocaine?
No thanks.
Yo, my man, you want some nudes?
No way. If someone offers you drugs, instead of saying something you really don't mean, just say, no.
Got some sensimillion for you.
No. No. No big production number. Just say, no. You'd be surprised how well it works.
Pot?
No.
This has been an actual anti-drug public service announcement. To combat this and other drug war hysteria, listen to the Marijuana Agenda every weekday at 3 p.m. Pacific at live.mjagenda.com or download the free podcast at mjagenda.com.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Just say no.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I am ill.
That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
People don't smoke marijuana.
Radical Rant.
Well, we kind of got a two-parter for the Radical Rant today. I got to send some messages out to two men in particular. Let's start off with the governor of my birth state, the also unfortunately named adorable gay sea mammal Butch Otter. And Butch Otter is just amazing, folks. This is a guy who won a tight-fitting jeans contest once, was busted for drunk driving once. There's all sorts of great stories about him in my home state of Idaho. But I got a report from Betsy Russell. This is just right off the Spokesman Review, I think out of Spokane, maybe, or not sure where this is from. But anyway, this is just a quick brief. It was posted from January 5th. I'm just going to read it in whole. Asked about legal marijuana in Idaho's neighboring states, Governor Butch Otter said, quote, "I think it's a big mistake. When the medical marijuana effort was being made, especially across the Pacific Northwest, I talked to several governors that initially had been in favor of it, and when it raised its head in Idaho, in talking with them, they said, don't do it, it's a big mistake." Continuing, quote, "You're going to create a black market, and it'll be in the hands of every school kid, and it'll be in the hands of every person that wants it. I have said time and time again, not on my watch." End quote. Well, the first thing I want to bring up is that the last governor who said not on my watch was a Republican, like you, who was term limited, like you, and his successor is committed to marijuana legalization. Now, it's true, I'm talking about Governor Chris Christie in New Jersey, who's on the outs, and the new governor, Phil Murphy's coming in, or is in, and has pledged to legalize marijuana. He's a Democrat. The chance of a Democrat winning Idaho are slim and none. But still, not on my watch just sounds like next to me. And it's not as if the state of Idaho can't change on this either. Right? I at first thought it could never, ever change. Back in 2013... Butch's Republican colleagues in the Idaho Senate voted something that was like 29-3, 29-5, something like that. They voted that no form of marijuana would ever be legal in any way, for any purpose, for anybody in the state of Idaho, forever and ever. Amen. Now, all forms of marijuana are already illegal in the state of Idaho for any purpose, for anybody. But they wanted to make damn sure. Never, ever, 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 never will it be legal in Idaho. And the very next year, well, maybe it's 2 years, but the next session, those same Republicans who said they'd never, ever legalize any form of marijuana, any way, anyhow, for anybody, for any reason, ever, went and passed a bill legalizing CBD oil for epileptic kids. Something about those crying, seizing, shuddering kids on the state house floor in Utah and Alabama and Mississippi and Iowa and Wisconsin and Virginia and Wyoming, all these other places that are conservative as hell like Idaho, they managed to pass it, but old Butch, when it came to his desk, he vetoed it. That's right, Butch Otter, the only governor in the nation to look at epileptic kids in a seizure and say, no, we can't give you a non-smoked, non-psychoactive cannabis oil that heals you, because if we do, why, teenagers might smoke pot. And that gets me to the main point. I mean, I love this idea of Butch Otter's that if you legalized medical marijuana in Idaho, it's going to create a black market that puts marijuana in the hands of kids. As if marijuana doesn't already exist, right? Like Idaho is completely pot-free. And if they brought in medical marijuana, oh my God, it would be a pot fest. As if there's not black market marijuana in Idaho right now. As if Idaho doesn't already have 5.77% of their 12 to 17-year-olds using marijuana monthly right now. Somebody's getting it into the hands of 1 out of 20 or about 1 out of 18 Idaho kids already. So cancer patients should have to suffer even though teens are already smoking pot? And shit, look at my own personal life, man. As if I didn't smoke marijuana in Idaho nearly every day from 1990 to 2003, Butch. As if I haven't been able to find marijuana quite easily when I visit Idaho from 2003 to 2017. For the past 27 years, Butch, I've been able to find weed in Idaho. As illegal as you keep it. You keep cancer patients from having it. You can keep AIDS patients from having it. You can keep Hep C patients from having it. You can keep epileptics from having it. But me, I've always been able to get it. Why do you support a system that fails to stop me from getting weed, but succeeds in stopping sick kids from getting medicine they need? That just seems cruel. I mean, Idaho is such a weird state, people. I don't know if I can get through to you just how weird it is. I mean, Idaho will let you carry guns anywhere, everywhere. Carry a gun anywhere you want. Open carry, no license, no permit. Just you're 18, 21, have a gun. Carry it anywhere you like. Idaho will allow you to drive on freeways in some rural areas at 80 miles an hour. And if you're passing someone, you can legally pass them at up to 15 miles per hour over what they're doing. Right? So if you're coming up on a guy that's going 80 miles an hour, you can pass him at 95 miles an hour. And the speeding tickets don't accumulate until after the 95 miles an hour. That usually takes 15 miles an hour over to get reckless driving. So theoretically speaking, you can drive 110 miles an hour on an Idaho freeway and not get a reckless driving charge. Just a speeding violation at 109, let's say, for safety's sake, right? Safety, statistically speaking, not driving. So you can have a gun, take a gun anywhere, bring your gun in your car, drive your car 110 miles an hour as you go out to the rural fireworks stand where Idaho will allow you to buy illegal fireworks. You can literally walk into a store in Idaho where they have a red floor and a blue floor. And the red floor is all the fireworks that are illegal to use in Idaho. But you can buy them there. You're in Idaho. The floor and the directions and the instructions all say these fireworks, do not use these fireworks in Idaho. These are illegal to use in Idaho, but you can buy them. So long as you sign a paper that says, I promise that I will drive these fireworks to some other state where they're legal. Wink. You're fine with all that. Take the guns everywhere. Drive as fast as you like. Buy all the illegal fireworks you like as long as you sign a promise that you'll be good. But you're terrified if an adult walked into a store, bought some labeled marijuana, kicked some tax revenue to the state, and smoked a joint at home in his garage. That's what you're terrified. That's what's got to be wiped out. We're terrified of that. Have the gun. Have the 110 miles an hour. Buy all the fireworks. But for God's sake, don't smoke a joint in your garage. Which, guess what? That adult's probably doing it already. Wait, who do you think I'm smoking weed with when I go to Idaho? Dudes in their garages most of the time. You know, I'd say that Idaho is the silliest, the marijuana ban in Idaho is the silliest, most prude, uptight, conservative thing I could say about Idaho. Until I remember that Idaho is so repressed that they can't handle hard liquor and a naked boob in the same building. Yeah, there's strip clubs. I'm using air quotes. Strip clubs in Idaho. You can buy beer or wine, and the dancers will be in bikinis. If the dancers take off their bikini tops in a club, then that club cannot sell beer and wine. Because naked boobs plus light alcohol, who knows what kind of chaos could ensue. And in no way can you get a shot. If there are women dancing on a stage in a club in bikinis, you cannot get a shot of alcohol. That's what Idaho's afraid of. Boobs and weed. Oh my God, we can't let people have boobs and weed. Now, let me get to the second half of the rant here, because this one's a little frightening. So there was this signing ceremony that Trump was at. And at this signing ceremony, it had to do with a bill that's providing drug screening technology to Border Patrol agents, finding ways to be able to detect illegal drugs. And President Trump suggested that he has a solution to drug problems in mind, but he doesn't think you're ready for it yet. Let me play that. Oh, this is Donald Trump with his cryptic statement during the signing ceremony.
We're going to sign this, and it's a step, and it feels like a very giant step, but unfortunately it's not going to be a giant step, because no matter what you do, this is something that keeps pouring in, and we're going to find the answer. There is an answer. I think I actually know the answer, but I'm not sure the country is ready for it yet. Does anybody know what I mean? I think so. Huh?
No, I have no idea what you mean. He says this drug screening is a step, but it's not a giant step. Nobody knows what the giant step might be, except he thinks he knows what the giant step might be, but that America's not ready for that giant step. So I got to thinking, what could Trump mean by this giant step? I mean, only just go back a few days, and I'll play you this entire clip where he talks about how countries that are harsh on drugs, we're looking at you, Philippines, countries that are harsh on drugs don't have much difficulty with them.
One of the things we are discussing very powerfully is drugs pouring into this country and how to stop it, because it's at a point over the last number of years, it's never been like this. We've never had a problem with drugs like we did, whether it's opioid or drugs in the traditional sense. It's never been like it is. And we are going to do everything we can. It's a very difficult situation, difficult for many countries, not so difficult for some, believe it or not. They take it very seriously, and they're very harsh. And those are the ones that have much less difficulty. But we are going to be working on that very, very hard this year. And I think we're going to make a big dent into the drug problem.
The ones that are harsh have much less difficulty. And remember, just months ago, when there was a phone call between President Trump and President Duterte in the Philippines, where he praised Duterte's handling of the drug war, said, "You're doing it the right way." And to date, that right way in the Philippines has been the slaughter of about 8,000 drug users and sellers. The crowding, the 3-to-1 crowding in the prison as drug users and traffickers are turning themselves in, because Duterte has unleashed vigilante forces, police forces. He said, if you get charged by the courts for murdering a drug trafficker, I'll pardon you. He pledged during his election campaign that he'd fill Manila Bay so full of drug criminals that the fish would get fat off eating their bodies. That's the guy Trump thinks is doing it the right way. That's the kind of harsh Donald Trump thinks would cause less drug problems in this country. And this most recent quote, his big step, his answer for drug abuse, his idea that the country isn't ready yet, what do you think it is? But at least we won't have to worry about Hillary Clinton starting World War III with her email server, now will we? I wonder what Jill Stein thinks about all this. Wonder what Jill Stein has to say. Maybe we could ask Jill Stein's drug czar to do something about it, or maybe we could ask Jill Stein's Secretary of State to weigh in. Maybe Jill Stein's Attorney General might have something in mind. Anyway, folks, that's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. Back tomorrow with more news and views you can use for the cannabis community.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
For everyone here in Delta 9 House and Studios, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.